Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Buffalo Plus YouTube channel. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. I'm Mike Catalana, along with Dan Fetes, who's in Indianapolis for his first visit to the NFL Combine. Jenna Cottrell right now searching the world for the proper microphone adapter so she can use the mic stand that we bought for her. So when she's back, hopefully that is all corrected. She's searching far and wide. Dan, I'm going to start with this. I've been there multiple times, even back when it was at Lucas Oil. I got to tell you, I miss being there. Fans sometimes don't get it, what goes on at the Combine. What's your initial impressions of the NFL Combine?
It's insane in the sense of, Mike, you told me, like, hey, like, there are a lot of people there and all that stuff. There's not a lot of people. The entire NFL world is here in Indianapolis. It's incredible. Like, this is one of those moments, Mike, where we've kind of sat here and went, this is why the NFL can't fail. That, like, every single person that talks about the NFL on any platform is here. I mean, you sit there and it's agents walking by, it's scouts, it's coaches, it is the prospects, it is every single analyst, everybody is here. It is right now, it's the center of the NFL universe. And it's crazy that it's in Indianapolis out of all places.
Well, you know, it's been like a central location. It's going to move around now. I think people are going to miss it being in Indy because there's something cool about where it is, the facilities and all that. But you mentioned that, and I think sometimes fans, we will all see, you know, the running of the sprints and the throwing the ball and all that stuff's kind of cool to watch. But to me, for us as reporters, that's never really part of it, right?
No, it's so much more of a networking like platform too. I mean, you go out to dinner and everybody is there, you know, it's ESPN, it's NFL Network, it's CBS Sports, like, and everybody is just in the same room and you're kind of killing time with one another. You're kind of, you know, just shooting the shit with them and you're just kind of sitting back. So it's an experience. There's no other way to get around it.
Speaking of experience, you mentioned dinner. You brought it up like an attorney. Like, you brought it up, so now we can question you on it. You got to experience St. Elmo's. I've been there with Toby Matika that worked for us, with Jenna, been at St. Elmo's. It is the old school, expensive steakhouse in Indy, but there's nothing quite like it. What was it like going there the other night?
It was awesome. It really is like kind of like that step back in time. And what was the first thing I texted you? I'm sitting there, and this is, you know, with a little behind the scenes stuff.
Yeah.
I'm sitting there, and Mike's like, everybody will be at Elmo's. And I'm like, okay, what's everybody? I walk in, I check in at the front desk saying, hi, our reservation. And then Drew Rosenhaus and his clan walks in behind me, and it was like, oh, yeah, you guys can go ahead. Like, you guys can get a drink before me. No problem. No problem. But like, yeah, great steak. I thought it was fun. I did get the shrimp cocktail. It was very good. It was a little bit much. You were right. It's a burn in the nostril of the horseradish. But really cool. Like I said, again, it's just one of those things to say that you had to be there. You went.
It's part of Indy. It's a cool place, and it is sort of the experience of what we're talking about. All right. Part of the experience also is an opportunity to talk with the head coach and the general manager, really for the first time since the season ended. You know, they have those goodbye interviews, and it's still fresh off the game itself. So, you know, Sean McDermott, Brandon Beane, both good with their time. Not only did you have Beane at the podium, Beane with all the Western New York reporters, you got a one-on-one with Brandon Beane. Yeah. Let's talk about your thoughts on what you heard, like in general, especially from Beane, about the approach to this offseason.
Well, I think it goes back to similar things. And as we've always said, Beane is really good at giving answers, but not giving too much. And I thought the one thing that was more interesting to me is that we look at this team, they're drafting 25th overall. That's where they are slated in the first round. And you just saw what the LA Rams did and how they were able to trade picks, and they went all in and they put their chips in, and it worked. And it's a model that the Rams have been criticized for in the past. We asked Brandon Beane about it, and he's like, it's tempting, especially when the Bills are a team, Mike, that are maybe a guy or two away. They don't need to fill this roster in the upcoming draft with tons of starters. Like they may need to find a piece or two. They could find a piece or two in free agency, but this isn't a team like we talked about last year, their draft class, like 2 guys got poached off their practice squad because their draft picks don't even make the roster. They send the practice squad, and then somebody else takes them because this roster is so good now that it already fits. So Beane says, like, it's tempting, but he doesn't want to close that window. He doesn't want to shrink his window. And there's salary cap gymnastics that he's going to have to work around. That was part of it too, where he goes, I don't want to all of a sudden take on all these salary caps. And then he's joking around with Sal Marana of the Democrat and Chronicle, and he goes, and then watch, I come in here 3 years later and we're $96 million over the salary cap, and I have to cut everybody but Josh Allen. And then you're coming up to me going, Brandon, what the heck are you doing? He goes, so like it's that perspective too. So I think that was interesting where I think we know Beane can be aggressive on drafts and in the trade market. It's just a matter of where they feel like they need to make that move.
Yeah, and if you think about it, like when he made the move for Diggs, you know, he had an emerging quarterback, and he went and got him a star, and he gave up a 1. And, you know, look, it became, you know, Justin Jefferson ends up being with the Vikings. That was on their pick, and he is a star, and he'd be a star anywhere. But nobody's upset with Stephon Diggs. And I think at that time, but then you also look at the roster, and you say, well, you know, you got Gabriel Davis with a draft pick, right? Mm-hmm. We've talked about them building with all these other players, Trey White and Matt Milano and Tremaine Edmonds, or whatever one.
Taron Johnson. Yeah, yes. Like you can go on and on.
Right. So there is both. And by the way, the Rams also used the draft pick to get Cooper Kupp, who's just totally outplayed his value.
Correct.
But I get it. But the Rams situation to me is different. They had a team built and then went all in. Now, I personally think that's awesome for the Rams, and Bills fans would take a Super Bowl in the way to get it. But you have the quarterback still an emerging guy. I don't see him making a move. You know, again, there's a lot between standing pat and mortgaging the future. He can do a lot. I could see him moving up. I could see him moving up in the draft to make a selection.
I agree, because it's, again, they don't need a ton of starters, and they have some depth. And I think they like the roster that they fine-tuned. It is tricky, though, with moving, because you can almost move up because, again, the salary cap is going to become more of a focal point in the coming years when Josh Allen's new deal kicks in. And as Beane has said, he likes to know what the numbers are going to be so he can kind of plan that out. So he can't make these moves without knowing, hey, there's a Tremaine Edmonds deal that may need to get done. There's a Stephon Diggs deal that needs to be reworked. So I can see moving up because I just don't see 7 draft picks, Mike, making this roster.
Yes, and that's always an interesting way to look at it. And it's impactful players. And maybe, you know, look, the odds are better the higher up. You take more swings at it, drafting more players. And I get that when you're building. But when you're in a position where you say there's limited spots. Now, the 2 spots that I think are positions of need in some form for them are corner and wide receiver. And you made a really interesting observation about their previous drafts. Actually, it goes back to before Beane was running the draft, the last time they made a big move with those 2.
Yeah, Mike, the last 8 drafts, the Bills have selected 2 wide receivers in the top 2 rounds. Going back before that, Brandon Beane, for his time in Buffalo, has only drafted 1 skill position player in the top 2 rounds on offense, and that was Josh Allen.
Yeah, right. Because it was right. 17 was before it was Beane. Yeah.
And that was Zay Jones, and the other wide receiver was 2014 in Sammy Watkins. So those are the drafts. Didn't really work out for either of those guys in Buffalo, but I agree that, look, I still believe that Brandon Beane's main focus, again, will be, like he said, is to protect Josh Allen. But I think you can protect him by giving him weapons on the outside to let him cook, as we said, or as Jenna says, flambe and broil and deep fry. Like that's what I think you need to do. So I think you need to keep putting resources and investing in Josh Allen, especially at a position with skill-wise. Like there's just a lot of uncertainty at the wide receiver position. We don't know about Emmanuel Sanders. We don't know about Cole Beasley. We don't know about Isaiah McKenzie. Those are key pieces. And I think it's irresponsible to spend $250 million on Josh Allen and then give him C-level parts to say, look, you go cover up all of our bruises and flaws.
Yeah, the other way to look at it is, you know, the year before he came is when they drafted Trey White in the first round. And corner is a big need. And look, when you do have Josh Allen, it's easy to say, give him help. Well, giving them another corner that helps his team is also help for the quarterback too. And that is a position of need. I think early on, they're going to be drafting either one of those spots. But I want to go back to wide receiver because you got to talk to and hear from a lot of them on Wednesday and what's there. And boy, there's a lot of talent. And I heard Sal Majorana ask about, it seems like so many jump right in. These guys come into the league much more ready to play. Give everybody a couple of indications of guys you heard from at the wide receiver position who easily could be in the Bills' plans.
Yeah, obviously, Traylon Burks was one of the guys I know that has gotten mocked at a couple of spots falling to the Bills. I don't know if he absolutely gets there at 25. He's a guy
big wide receiver, Arkansas, right? Yep.
Arkansas. Yeah, kind of played everywhere, and he even said his comp and who he wants to model his game after is Deebo Samuel, which is a guy that I think that like that type of weapon, skill player is kind of what we thought at times maybe the Bills lacked. Again, it's kind of like an Isaiah McKenzie on steroids kind of thing.
Well,
again,
not
there's
necessarily steroids,
not
theoretical
right.
steroids. Yes,
correct. And another guy, there are a couple of guys that are coming off of injuries as well, which makes it tricky. A couple of Alabama wide receivers with John Mechie, as well as Jameson Williams, which he was the guy that his charisma kind of jumped off the page to me today. He was asked a lot about, he tore his ACL in the national championship game here at Lucas Oil. So he was asked about what was it like coming back to Indy. And he's like, it is what it is. Like, I didn't have any bad memories. But it was also the fact that he was asked, like, did you watch the play? And he's like, I've watched the play a ton of times. And he's like, why? And he goes, shit, I wanted to see how it happened because I never thought it could happen to me. And he said that he has speed that you cannot teach. He has rare level speed. And again, another guy we think about adding for this Bills offense is that deep threat that they kind of lost with John Brown. Stephon Diggs can go over the top, but that's not really his main game. And then it was the funniest part I thought was, obviously he tore his ACL just 6 weeks ago, something like that. Or he had surgery 6 weeks ago. So he's off crutches. He's starting to walk around. He's obviously not going to work. You know, we don't know when his timetable is. He says he's ahead of schedule. Mike, like you said when we were talking on the phone earlier, like obviously everybody's ahead of schedule at the combine.
Yeah.
He said he did talk to the Bills. He said he loves Josh Allen, so he can check that box. Obviously, it'd be a bigger red flag if somebody came out and said, I wouldn't want to play with a guy like Josh Allen. But Mike, he was asked, if you were to be able to run the 40 and you were healthy, what would you run? And he kind of smiled and laughed and then said, the fastest. And then he said, and he kept going on and said, whoever has the fastest time, mine would be faster than theirs. He goes, so that's what my time is. He goes, whoever it is, just put mine up there. And again, Brandon Beane at his end of the year press conference said to add some speed. And he goes, I'd love to have a guy like Tyreek Hill. If you know of anybody like him, let me know. I'd love to have him. I'd love to get him. Mechie could be, or Williams could be one of those guys.
Yeah. I mean, it does leave them with some possibilities. And again, you know, sometimes you sit and you wait at 25 because guys are falling to, and other times you decide to make a move. And I think based on what you were saying before about being aggressive and finding a guy gives him options to do that, because there's also teams with multiple draft picks in the first round that might be looking to make a deal. I want to go back quickly to a topic of conversation, because you said everybody's there, and included in everybody is guys who've left the Bills like Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll. And the questions came up about the relationship between Daboll and McDermott. Mm-hmm. How did the two of them play that out?
Yeah, it was kind of like, it's weird to say that we had kind of talked about it throughout the season here on the Buffalo Plus YouTube channel, that the relationship was seeming to sour for whatever reason. I think it was a philosophy on running the football. I think McDermott wanted to run the ball more, and I don't think Daboll really wanted to, and said, these are the pieces that I have to go with. So reports even surfaced, it was in the Brian Flores lawsuit against the NFL, that Daboll was messaging with Flores saying that, you know, hey, I would like to just probably leave and be an offensive coordinator because Sean and I aren't getting along well. Like, that's in the lawsuit.
I think it was more of another person said that the two of them had problems, and maybe Daboll would be. But I think even based on what those guys said in Indy, acknowledged pretty much, certainly McDermott did, that there was something.
Daboll dodged it. He answered it like a Bill Belichick. Said he loved his time in Buffalo. He has nothing but the utmost respect for Sean and Brandon. He was a great time there. The reason that he left was because it was a head coaching opportunity, something he's strived for 25 years of coaching. So, like, you can't sit there. It's not like he took another offensive coordinator job in Jacksonville.
Right.
Like he left because it was a promotion. Now, when Sean McDermott.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, and those things aren't mutually exclusive. Like, all that can be true, and he still could have had problems with McDermott.
Correct. And then when we asked Sean McDermott about it, off to the side when it was just the Western New York media, he pretty much acknowledged it, but downplayed it in the sense of like, it's just boys being boys kind of thing. Like, yeah, we had some hard conversations. They don't always work out well. You have difference of opinions, but I have nothing but the most respect for Brian. I think that there was a riff of some kind. He said conversations did get heated.
Yeah.
To what extent? Again, are we blowing this out of proportion? Was it just a one time they had a bad day? Was it, a game plan? Was it as the season went along where they were seeing it? But yeah, it was, again, it's kind of like what you said, Mike, about the 13 seconds. What they're not saying speaks volumes in the truth of what is there.
Yeah. And I do believe this. First of all, it's 4 years of working together, and there's going to be tension. And there was success, and it happens all the time. It happens amongst players, teammates, anybody who's played. Sometimes it boils over a little bit, and
sometimes your boss makes you want to do a story that you didn't want to do. And
obviously, in most cases, the boss is 100% right, and then he allows you to vent a little bit. But you know what I'm saying is, it can happen, and that doesn't take away from all of the other stuff. And look, I think it sort of ran its course. And I also think Brian Daboll believed he was going to get a head coaching job last year, and it didn't happen.
Correct.
But the New York Giants offer him a head coaching job. Like, you're going. And I'm happy for Daboll that he got that as opposed to leaving for something else. I don't know if it would have come to that. It might have. But it is interesting that McDermott was a little more forthcoming about it. Just admit it and move on. Don't pretend like it was nothing.
Yeah, and the other thing that, again, got constantly brought up, it got brought up on the national when he went to the podium, and you have every writer. Obviously, 13 seconds got brought up, and then it was brought up again because this was the first time we've talked to Sean since we heard Saran Neal give his Zoom conference with the media. And I think Sean's saying he said it comes down to execution, which is what has been the company line this entire time. But he also said, I've addressed it enough. Execution eventually falls on the head coach. That's on me. But I think they want to be over it. I don't think we want to ask any more questions about it. But it was one of those where I thought Beane and McDermott handled themselves very well for a long day. It was a long day for us. They did above and beyond. They did corroborate and confirm the story that you broke last week, Mike, on Buffalo Plus, was that talks are ongoing to bring training camp back to Fisher. But what's interesting was the fact, Mike, that Beane isn't set on needing to find stability of where training camp is. And I thought that was interesting. I thought you would want to get a deal knowing, hey, for the next 5 summers, we're going to here for training camp or here for training camp. And Beane told me that's not the case. That he goes, if we go to Rochester this year and we do it, and then we think, let's go to Buffalo the following year, that's what they want to do. They want to do whatever's best. And because they feel comfortable with the facilities, because they've done it at Fisher before, this isn't some drawing up whole new plans. Like they're comfortable with it. So whether they bounce back and forth, I don't know. But they did say that they want to get a deal done, and they're expecting it to be in the next few weeks.
Yeah, well, that is interesting. And again, I think it still could go either way, which what we said on the story. But the fact that they're talking in that way tells you that it is of interest, and whether they get it done. And I still do believe they're going to get it done. And it might just be for this year because the deal ran out. So it's talking about restructuring, and maybe it is a yearly thing that we find out what ends up being. I was a little surprised that McDermott when talking about 13 seconds, said, snitches get stitches. That did not seem like something he would say, but
yeah,
he brought it up. So can you imagine?
I can't believe it.
Can you imagine him saying that?
There was one other question that he just gave the Sean McDermott look. Like, it's in the middle of you asking the question. I can't remember who it was, but it was almost like he was staring through your soul, like, finish your question so I can ignore this one. It was like, finish it so I can just say, yeah, we're not getting into it. And I can't remember what it was, but it was, again, Beane was really good, as always. As we've said before, Beane is so great at giving you a soundbite or making you go, huh. And then when you think about it, you're like, he didn't really say anything.
But there's other times, and go ahead, anybody, because the full interview is on this Buffalo Plus YouTube channel. Same with McDermott. There are times we've gone back to a question I asked him at the Combine about wide receivers, and it ended up playing itself out that's when they draft Gabriel Davis and they let go of John Brown, that it was like that he spelled that out at Combine, not with specific names, a year before or when they were making that deal. And you do hear some things. So it's an interesting listen. Anyhow, all right, I'm going to let you get going. I know there's still more going on, more time. Look, what do you got? You're at the weightlifting area, right?
Yeah, of course. Obviously, Mike.
Yes.
And then all the podiums are over there. Yeah. It's cool. It's a really cool setup.
Just go up to guys and say, you lift, bro? Just ask them that when you're there.
Me and Sal Maron are going to hit the bench.
All right, you do that. You and Sal, be good. All right, that's Dan Fetes in Indianapolis at the NFL Combine for Dan and for Jenna Cottrell, who's, I don't know, maybe she's looking for a car.
In warmer weather. That's all I'll tell you.
Something like that. I'm Mike Catalana. Thanks for watching. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to Buffalo Plus on YouTube.